So if the challenge here is really something around the question of going back to our original governance kind of model, the question is, what should we govern? What should our scope be? And initially, we said scope was defined by the things being governed. So are we governing simply data, or are we governing data value? Now, if we're simply governing data, we're in the left side of that value chain. If we're governing data value, we're governing the full value stream. Now, this has a lot of organizational impacts because historically, different parts of an organization really had different parts of this under their sort of their purview or their domain. So the question is, how do we organize ourselves so that we're collectively coordinating this at a level that we respect the organization of the company, but yet we're providing alignment and governance over the full chain? That becomes the challenge. So I'm talking now about data value governance, not just data governance. So traditional data governance has been the leftmost box, which we talk about things it's been focusing on. So traditionally, data governance job was to put policies to make data more available to more people and to protect it and secure it and make it more useful to people. But it didn't concern itself with how data was going to be used or what value it was going to actually produce. But that means you could have lots of good data that nobody used, and you had no impact on if the data was going to be acted on or not. So let me give you another little perspective that I'd like to share when I talk about this topic. And I'll give you a personal example. I'll give you an example from a TV sitcom about why it's important to govern this full value chain. From a personal experience point of view, I was driving my car on the freeway last summer, and the low tire pressure indicator came on my dashboard. So I'm getting this new insight from the instruments in my car, and it came on and indicated I had a problem. And with my biases, I dismissed it. So I said, there's got to be a fault signal. So I pressed the reset on it, and it cleared. A few minutes later, it came back on again. And my bias said, oh, it's got to be just another fault signal. I don't want to have a delay here. So I did this 2 or 3 times, and I reset the indicator. And by the 4th occurrence of the signal, rather than getting the signal, I got a noise called thump, 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 and I had a flat tire. And I ignored what the data was trying to tell me. And so that is a classic case where how people can ignore with their biases the impact of data on the actions you should be taking. So I paid the price. I decided to ignore the data, and I paid the price by having to call the motor league and tow me to a local repair place at a waste of my time, an extra cost, and a lot of aggravation. So the fact that I wasn't incented to react to this in a positive way, the data really is of no value. Let me give you another example. This is from a TV sitcom, The Office. So the old show The Office was quite popular in from 2005 to the early part of this decade. And Michael Scott was the buffoon office manager who was sort of a technology phobe. He didn't like technology. But in one episode, he got a new car where in that era, GPSs were very novel and new. So he got a new car and had a GPS to help him navigate the car. And he was afraid to use it. So his staff kept telling him, Michael, you got to use the GPS. Trust it. Use the technology. It'll guide you to good places. So he took the technology and literally took it literally to the nth degree, didn't challenge it, and drove his car into a lake. Now, he paid the same price I did. He wasted his time. He had to get a tow truck to tow him out of the lake. I had to get a tow truck to tow me off the highway. So in both cases, I ignored the signal. He took the signal too literally and it didn't challenge it. Now, we both paid the price of that. So if we don't govern how people will interpret data and internalize data and deal with biases and know how to challenge it with critical thinking, then data itself could be a dangerous thing that's not used, or it's used blindly. So my point here is, if we don't govern the value chain, we're opening ourselves to risks of, again, lack of use or blind use. And that's what we're trying to avoid. And so I believe we have to broaden our discussions from simply looking at governing data to governing data value, recognizing that it's this value stream that tells us how the data is going to be used. And that's what I should really care about, is the value that's being left on the table because I'm not using it properly, and opportunities to improve how data can be used. And I think we have to broaden our perspective.